Hi, I'm Kayleen. This is my fourth video on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is mainly to teach people health and fitness and caregiving. I'm promoting my book that's supposed to be coming out that I'm working on real hard to come out this summer of 2022. It'll be called Mom Remembers Me. It's how I use my health and fitness knowledge to stop my mother from mild dementia from forgetting me. And it worked. And I'll share lots of stories on my channel, on my caregiving. And I'm also a health and fitness professional. So I want to thank you for joining me today. I want it in the whole chaos of the world to just take back, relax. Remember, my videos are not going to be a whole bunch of all these images coming in. I'm going to help you learn how to focus. I think all those images, sometimes they bother me. There's sometimes they have a new image every 3 words. And whenever I see a presentation, a lot of times when the person is speaking and they have a PowerPoint and the PowerPoint presentation has different words than what the speaker is saying, I'm always perplexed between, do I listen to the speaker or do I read the images? So with me, you just have to sit back and listen to what I'm talking about. So I want to thank you for staying with me. I hope you'll stay. This video is a little bit about memory challenges, brain challenges, caregiving, my daily memory sketches that I do, using time to challenge yourself, using an entertainment spread that I really enjoy looking back on for challenging my memory, and how I fought a nursing home in court who illegally held my mother. I wanted to start out with a neuro test. It's called the 3 words. They gave this to my mother, and I just questioned the validity and the efficacy of this test. So here are the 3 words. I want you to remember apple, banana, chair. And later on, I'm going to ask you what those 3 words are. And I'm not going to say them again, but I will put them in the notes for this video and see how you do. I wanted to teach you how I use my bullet journal, or any journal for that matter, for my memory improvement. So first I want to go over my monthly and weekly calendars. I believe handwriting out the month and the weeks really helps my memory to be able to visualize what date and what day of the week that is. The neuro test always asked my mother what the day of the week was, which I always found perplexing too, because she didn't work for decades, so it didn't matter to her what the day of the week is. And when we go on vacation, we don't know the day of the week. And then also getting back home is also part of your comfort zone. So there's that joke, the best part of a vacation is getting back home. And of course, my mother, in some instances, she wasn't obsessive about it, but she would mention about going back home. She really did enjoy California and moving around here and the challenges and being with me all the time. But she would say she wanted to go back home. And my mother's doctor said they didn't know why the people with dementia or some mild dementia always say that. And my answer was, of course, we always want to go home to a comfort zone. We want our familiarity, what's comfortable for us. So I always found those questions perplexing whenever they would ask my mother what the date was. And there was one doctor that I brought my mother to when I first moved her to California who asked my mother what the date was. So my mother went to go look behind him to look at his calendar on the wall, and he immediately stopped her and said, no, that you're not allowed to do that. And that's a natural, everybody looks at a calendar to know what the date of the week is. I always know the day of the week, but I never know the date of that day of the week many times. And I really believe now writing out the whole month and the weeks has helped me to be able to see it. So of course I found a new doctor for my mother after that. I didn't like the way he did that. I just thought that was dirty pool, judging her on something, which is actually a lot of part of my books. My mother made the exact same mistakes that everybody else made, and people would come up to me and say, you got to watch your mother. I really thought that was unfair, and I'll go over some of those in future videos. Here is one of my monthly calendars. This is for December, so I decided to pick Frosty the Snowman as my theme for my December BUJO month. I'm pretty good at copying, but I can't draw out of my head. So even though I drew this, copying the image from one of the picture books that I have from childhood, I probably can't do it from my head without seeing it, which is one of my goals for my art. So this is what I do for my monthly. I just put down my appointments in this. So then my weekly, I have it all set up for some other questions, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. But I wanted to show you my Frosty the Snowman. I don't stress myself out and make sure that I get it all done before the beginning of the month. A lot of times I would finish some of my images during the month when I had time. And I haven't finished my monthly drawings for February yet, so I thought, and I didn't really quite like January as much, so I thought I would show you December's. So I like drawing cartoons more, plus I'm watching a lot more cartoons, which I'll show you later with my entertainment spread. Now I wanted to show you one of my weekly schedules. And like I mentioned, I am able to visualize and see what the date is for each day of the week for during the month and during the week, because I spent the time writing it all out. And it is time consuming, but I'm always proud of myself looking back at it. So this is one of my weeklies from January. My theme for January was Archie and Jughead. So I always leave a little space in the top right there for my favorite quote or a key learning that I just want to be able to remember. And I happen to be watching the Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone TV show, when someone said that short journey into the Twilight Zone. And sometimes I feel like that's what's happening in the world nowadays. But I did change this since I took this picture and did this. I've added another line to each of one of my days. So every day I wake up, at some point in the day, it doesn't have to be first thing. And sometimes I even jump ahead. And if I have another positive affirmation that I want to make sure I have, that I already used one for the day, I'll put it in for the next day. So I write down what I'm grateful for each day, a positive affirmation. Today and so that's where I put what I did that day. So I find that really helpful, just to write down what I did that day for something different. So if I went to a restaurant, I'll put down the name of the restaurant, which really helps when you look back at your credit card charges to see whether there's any mistakes. I haven't caught any mistakes, but it's another good habit of checking credit card charges. Then I have healthy habits. In my last video, I showed you my healthy habits, so I write some of my healthy habits there that I actually achieved. So if I did my oil pulling or dry brushing, or even, I don't put flossing there because that's a normal thing, but I don't do oil pulling or dry brushing every day. So on those days I put that. Of course, I put my exercise and my strength. I put down if I had alcohol, because I want to track to see my energy levels. Wine makes me sleepy the next day, so I don't drink wine very much anymore. Put down my weight. Since I've been a fitness professional for so many years, I used to not even weigh myself because I didn't want to be obsessive. But I realized if you don't put your weight down, it can get out of hand. I've never gotten overweight, but I have gotten up a little bit. And I always remember that Betty White said that she weighed herself every morning, and when she was a little higher, she just didn't eat as much that day. So that was a way for her to keep her weight in there. And I put down how many hours I sleep. I do have a tendency of timing myself for a lot of things. I'm going to go over that in a little bit later, right? And then how many hours I do on my book, Mom Remembers Me, and how many hours on YouTube. And if I feel positive or negative, what I did for money. I really like to bother me. We really have to work on not letting any adversity bother us. You can't avoid adversity. And adversity is good for your mind and for your body, but you have to choose whether you let it bother you. That's all part of stress management. One person can be stressed out by something that doesn't bother anybody else. So I put down, did I let that bother me? So then whatever happened, if somebody was a jerk to me, said something stupid, I just got to delete it from my brain. And the other line that I added into my book here is I put down, did I get negative thoughts, and who was I around? Because you watch the Living Matrix documentary, and thoughts are living part of out there. So some days, if you ever notice, you do have all positive all day. So I just kind of wonder whether maybe those days when I have negative thoughts, who was I around? So this is drawing on the left side. I did that with water-based markers, copying an image from a cartoon book that I borrowed from the library. And I like water-based markers because they don't bleed through, but I don't like the lines. So then on the right side, I decided to use alcohol markers, and I copied it from the book. And that's an extra sheet of paper that I put on top because we know the alcohol will bleed through. It's always a conundrum of life, right? The water-based markers don't leak through the page, no matter how thin it will. If it's too thin, it will leak through. But then I don't like how it blends. And the alcohol markers blend very well, but they always bleed through everything. So it's getting better at copying the cartoons. And it gives me a nice little shot at putting a quote. Next, I wanted to go over my spreads that I put in. I don't put them in every month. I just fill out a new page when I filled up my previous page somewhere. And of course, I'm copying what writer Carol said in this bullet journal. So when you have collections, I have little lines that tell me where the next page number, where I continue on that collection throughout my BUJO, so I can go back and forward looking through all my I call them That's Entertainment because I think about those old movies. Remember when Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, and they used to show bits and pieces of all the Broadway type movies. So that's why I call these spreads my That's Entertainment. Of course, I can't sing. So here is my spread, one of my spreads I just combine books and movies. I am reading a lot of graphic books to get ideas to write my graphic memoir. So there are a lot of cartoon books here that I also put down. But at first I wasn't making little notes next to the book or the little image that I copied from the internet or used to copy from the library a lot of times. But then I'd look back and I couldn't remember what the movie was about sometimes, or even the book. So, and I'm sure all of you, which I always kind of question about all the memory, when sometimes you start a movie and you think you've seen it before, and then all of a sudden the last 10 minutes of the movie you're like, yes, I saw this before, and I remember what the ending was. So now I write little notes about the book and the movie so I can look back, and these are one of my favorite spreads to go back to look through. So this is one page, Wreck-It Ralph. I really like those movies, and I really like a lot of these. There's lots of historical books by Nathan Hale on a lot of the wars, Revolutionary War, and lots of other books. In graphic books, I really like graphic books because it cuts out the boring parts, right? Even if you read the book Billionaires, it talks about Rupert Murdoch, Jeff Bezos. That cuts out, it's dry finance, but it cuts out those for finance, which isn't on this page. I think I read those books last year. And of course, even audiobooks I put in here, what I learned about it. And lately I put a little bit more. So this is my first page. And I wanted to show this is my second page. And see, I did start writing more notes. And I am going to probably block out a little bit of stuff that I'm not quite sure I should share with you guys. So I watched Aladdin again. All the colors. I just love the colors of cartoons and animated movies. And there's so many good messages in all the animated movies. I wish adults would remember some of those messages. This I Am was a very good documentary, and the same as The Living Matrix that I mentioned earlier about if you're around negative people, maybe their negative energy and their thoughts are jumping into your brain. It's just a quiz question that I'm asking myself. And I think that my BUJO and for everybody could be like you kind of create your studies on yourself, same as when your food reaction tracker to see what foods are affecting you certain ways. If your nose runs after you eat a certain food, that's an allergic reaction that's causing inflammation that's going to hurt your brain, which is part of my book about my mother. I kept my mother away from gluten and her nose started running, and then she was able to sleep. A lot of times if your nose is running, then it affects your sleep, and sleep is the most important thing. So here are some pictures. This prognosis book I really enjoyed, by Sarah Valance. It was a really good book about her brain injury. I actually emailed her and she answered me back. So I think putting on the pictures of the books and movies and even the ones you listen to. Another thing that I really do that as a teacher, we know that students only remember 10% of what they hear. So what you need to do is somehow say it, read it, and hear it. So when I'm out walking and I'm listening to an audiobook, I have a little tape recorder, and I love that little tape recorder. I keep it with me all the time. I know I could use my phone, but I like this little voice tracer. And I say the notes that I want to write in my notebook while I'm out walking, and then later on I get home with my notebook. I have another notebook for notes like that. I stick to just 3 notebooks. I don't want to have 10 of them like I used to do. Just put everything in those 3 notebooks. But when I say it into my tape recorder, and then when I hear myself saying it back to me later on, and then when I write it in my notes, that is really helping my memory. So if you're having any troubles, and I used to do this in grad school, I used to tape my professors for some of my exercise physiology classes, and then fill in my notes later on, as well as listen to lectures while I was out walking. So if you're having trouble with any topic, if you're a student, I would highly recommend you try doing those. So this is my second page of my That's Entertainment spreads. Next, I want to talk about my daily memory sketches. And this is another spread that I really enjoy looking back at. I even have it marked every month throughout all of my journals so I could just quickly jump to those pages. But they're one of my favorites. So here is one of my months. I do this every month. It's just sometimes I've given myself 2 pages, but 4 pages, but this time I think it's better if I just make it a 1 spread so it's 1 page to look at. So this is my January memories. I have whited out some stuff that's a little too personal. I'm sure you can understand that. But I write down like little pictures of the day. And of course, even I want to, so some of the pictures that I copied, I did out of my head that I don't really like, but I still remember what happened on that day. So I wanted to encourage you that even if you don't like your little sketch, you're still going to know what you were trying to draw. So like on the 18th, I got new tires. So I remember now, even though that tire looks a little goofy, I remember I had a boring day over the weekend, the 8th and the 9th. I met some people on the 6th. When I was going for a walk, I noticed the 2nd, I noticed that door was open and this graffiti under a bridge. And I never noticed that there was a door there. So I wrote that down. I went out to dinner with some friends on the 29th, and some other people said some stuff. So I write it all down. So I just want to encourage you to maybe draw a little daily memory sketch. And it doesn't have to be, you could actually just print a little image stuff. What I also do is if I do go to a particular restaurant that I go to quite a bit, I don't want to write the name of the restaurant, so I decided to put down just the logo of the restaurant to really test my brain for my memory. So you can see on the 20th, if anybody knows what that logo of that restaurant is, it's a common restaurant, it's a chain. You know that also that brand marketing is used to make everybody feel comfortable no matter where you go to that restaurant. So that's why every Applebee's, every Chili's always looks exactly the same, because they're basing their marketing on our comfort zone. So you go to places because it's comfortable. So I think you have to be a little careful of that if you want to eat better food. I also wanted to remind you about Tony Buzan's mind mapping books, and there's lots of books on doodling that really helps the brain. So like I said, even if it's not really good, you still know what you're trying to do. I also, which I forgot to mention on my weekly pages, that I have an iPad and I have the Adobe Fresco app on there, and the Adobe Fresco is free. And what's really challenging and what's good about the Adobe Fresco and drawing on an iPad is it challenges you to use both hands. So if you're drawing with your right hand, if you want to erase and switch what your little pencil is doing, you use your left hand. And now, of course, if you're a little faster by using your right and your left, which we all know how good using both of your hands is good. As well as, if you didn't know this, the most amount of real estate for the brain is in your fingers. So the more times you use your fingers, the better it is for your brain. And that's a huge realization that I had when I've been teaching all my fitness classes for all these years. I was always frustrated trying to teach people push-ups. So if you saw my last video, I was trying to teach you how to do push-ups, but I think I forgot to mention how your hands should be flat. That's why everybody always has trouble doing push-ups, because this part of your wrist always hurt. But you're supposed to push to the entire hand. And people, I've noticed over the decades that people have the hardest time pushing down, so these part of the knuckles are flat. And when I say push down here, people somehow always pick up here. You're not supposed to, the whole hand should be flat, like you're creating a suction cup. And I always couldn't understand, but when I started reading all the brain books, I realized because people weren't used to using their fingers are together, we're always mousing, holding. So using your fingers and using individually will really help your brain as well. So I wanted to share one of my daily memory sketches. Okay, back to my daily memory sketch. What I also created for myself to challenge myself even more is a memory key. So you can see the flap on the right side there, that I push that flap down. I'm looking at the pictures and quiz myself, because quizzing yourself is the best way to learn anything. So keep having your friends or relatives quiz you on something that you really want to learn. So I quiz myself with this. So I put that flap down and look at every single day and try to picture what that sketch meant to me and what it means. So it keeps challenging my brain. You also need to remember that all the brain books also mention that cursive writing is better for your brain. And they didn't specifically say, at least I don't remember, why cursive writing, longhand, is better for your brain, but I somehow think it's because connecting the letters is hard. So when I have my students for their final, handwrite out their final assignments, like one time I had them pick 15 yoga poses and how that helps them, and I told them they had to do all cursive writing, I had so much flack for them. They really didn't want to do the cursive writing. And and I know as a teacher what you don't want to do, which is what I did with my mother all the time too. I kept my mother using her fingers as much as I possibly could. I had her write down a list of the receipts from during the month. I had her add it up. I had her fill the dishwasher. I had her cut up things. She didn't do anything unsafe. I didn't have to worry. She didn't want to do it, but I kept encouraging her and telling her I needed some help, and then she would do it, and I kept her fingers, using her fingers. That's why they always say musicians have a lower risk for Alzheimer's, because they're using their fingers so much. And what's kind of funny is people always complain about that their handwriting is so bad. So I have an answer for you. The answer is slow down. You could actually write better if you slow down. So I challenge myself not to print as often as I possibly can. I try to always do my cursive writing and try to go slower, especially in my other journal. And then, of course, you can practice your calligraphy. I always like practicing and creating new. So when I'm writing in my brain dump journal, I try to also have just play around with how I set up the words. So if you have one word that kind of a title for your paragraph talking about whatever you're journaling about, I just play around with how I'm going to draw that. So I would challenge you to always write in cursive and just slow down, and you would be able to write in cursive, longhand. The next thing I wanted to go over, what I do for time and for my memory, is I always keep quizzing myself with time. So I time how long I sleep. I push my timer on I just have an Ironman watch. I don't have the whole Apple watch. My joke is I don't need all the Apple watches and fitness watches, because I know when I'm exercising. So I use this for a lot. So of course I time my walks, and I write in my cardio challenge how long my walk was. I also time how long I meditate and try to increase my length of time. But in the book, called The Woman Who Changed Her Brain by Barbara Arrowsmith Young, she stated that studying the clock and time really helped her brain. I think she had some challenges with her brain. So she said she was always challenging herself by looking at analog clocks, not digital clocks. I tried to get them to share some of their information because I wanted to use it with my mother, but they wouldn't share anything. I would have even paid for their certification to learn, but you have to already have a job at a school that wants to use their program, and this is in Canada. But they wouldn't share anything. So I started making up stuff for myself. So I really, when I'm out walking, I end up after I walked for a little bit, I think, how long have I been out here? I'll think, okay, have I been out here for 37 minutes? I look at my clock to see, and then I quiz myself for what time of the day it is. I really think I'm getting much better at that. I can get down to the exact minute and how many minutes I've been out there. So the time is really important. I haven't, if anybody knows, if there are any studies why that's so important for your brain to know, I would love to hear. And of course, I would love to hear any suggestions, anything you guys do in your bullet journal for your memory. If you have daily memory sketches, how you do it, I would welcome any advice and share with all my other subscribers. What I always think is really funny about time is all of us have time getting away with us. And what's kind of funny, I also believe, is when you see a woman who had a baby, you know the woman had a baby at some point in the past, and then whenever you say, oh, the baby must be only a year old, and the mother goes, oh no, my child is 5 years old. See how time gets away from all of us so fast, but they judge the neurological test on the time. So that's one other reason that I question some of the neurological tests, but I would welcome any feedback anybody has about those neurological tests that they give for mental capacity and assessments. So now the next question is, do you remember what those 3 words are? Usually when they give the neuro test, they ask them what the 3 words are within 5 minutes. It has been probably 20-25 minutes if you've been sitting and listening to my whole video. But what were those 3 words? I'm not going to tell you what they are. I will write them in the notes for this video. But after I learned about that neuro test, I gave all of my students the 3-word test. And only about half of them, half of 25 students in one class got all 3 words. And the other half just got 2, which is what my mother always got. She always got 2 of the words. Also, a lot of the memory books also state that something has to be meaningful to you for you to remember it. So when the doctors gave my mother 3 random words that really don't matter or don't mean anything to her, why are they requiring that? We remember traumatic events, unfortunately. We also remember something that's meaningful. So it needs to be meaningful. And of course, a lot of the memory books also talk about creating something in your brain. So even if you put your keys down, you have to like pretend your keys are exploding on that table or on that end table or wherever you put them so that you will remember where you put your keys. And of course, it's that joke whenever people are looking for something and then somebody says to you, do you remember the last time you had them? Well, if you remembered the last time you had them, you wouldn't be looking for those keys. So try to make things meaningful to you and challenging your brain to make something look goofy. So even when I meet people, I try to make their name. I'm really good with names because I've been working at it. And remember, you have to like stop saying to yourself, I'm not good with names, or I'm not good with a downward dog, or I'm not good with balance, or I'm not good with strength. You are setting up yourself in your brain to be bad with those. So what you could do is flip your brain and say, well, I used to have a problem with remembering names, but now I'm really good at it. I've worked at it. I've thought about crazy things in my head with somebody's name. It is weird how you can remember a lot of a conversation with somebody, but you can't remember their name. So, but create some crazy things in your head. And of course, the daily memory sketches that I went over is a good opportunity. And that's also what I do with my daily every day. At the end of the day, I'll write down, I met this person or I met this person in my daily. Sometimes I put it in the daily memory sketch, or sometimes I just put it in my notes for the day of what I did for that day. So look for opportunities. And now when I see them later, I remember them and remember the conversation. And I will tell you what's kind of funny when it comes to memory with my mother. I mean, I have seen people 6 months later after I met them, and they don't remember me at all. They don't remember the conversation. They don't remember, these are males and females. So, but they judge my mother on if she can remember somebody a little bit later. So another point that I wanted, all these assessments I think need a lot of work, but like I said, I would welcome any feedback anybody has on them, especially if you know the studies where they found it. I have seen some 3 little studies on the 3 little words, but the cube drawing, which I mentioned in my last video, I wonder about the efficacy of the cube drawing. What's also funny about our memory is in conversation with people, people will stop you talking so they can immediately write it down because they know they're not going to remember, or they'll text their friend or something or somebody something that they just learned because they know they're not going to remember, but they test the elderly on 3 words. So like I mentioned earlier, I keep my tape recorder with me all the time and save my notes into that and then transcribe my notes into my notebook and into my BUJO and into my to-do list. I find that very helpful. I hope my video has given you a chance to rest and just sit back. As promised, I'm going to give you another posture link. So remember, your posture affects your IQ, and people slump all the time. So today's posture link is I want you to stop crossing your legs. Whenever you cross your legs, when everybody crosses their legs, what do? They round everything. So unless you sit up straight and do a gluteal stretch like this, that would be okay. But typically when people cross their legs, they're looking for opportunities to give their core a break. And I want you to use all of my posture links as a way to have you remember to sit up straight, work on your posture, book on your head, retract your shoulder blades. At the same time, you're stretching out your pecs. So I want to thank you for staying with me. I also want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. Remember, it's free. I would really appreciate it. I think I need 885 more people to get my 1,000 subscribers. If you have any questions, please, by all means, make a comment. I also want to give you an offer. If you are thinking of taking out a relative out of a nursing home to take care of them yourself, I will help you for free. I will teach you everything I learned, as well as I had to fight a nursing home corporation in court for 2 months who was illegally holding my mother for the insurance money, but I won. Everything they did was illegal, and I learned it all after the fact. Thanks for staying with me. Take care. Hope to see you in 2 weeks.